There is a moment in the oldest surviving book of the ancient Maya when a hero reaches the entrance of a dark cave and stops. Behind him, the trials of the underworld have already stripped away his dignity, his comfort, and his companions. Ahead, inside the cave, there's only darkness and the sound of wings. He climbs into his blowgun to sleep, because the blowgun is the only protection he has, and he survives the night. But at dawn, for just one moment, he peeks out. That is all it takes. In less than a heartbeat, Camazotz, the death bat, takes his head. The ancient Maya civilization was not a single empire but a network of city-states spread across what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. At its peak, during the classic period between roughly 250 and 900 CE, Maya cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan were among the most sophisticated urban centers on Earth, with advanced mathematics, a fully developed writing system, complex astronomical calendars accurate to within seconds, and an understanding of the cosmos that organized every aspect of daily life around the relationship between the living, the dead, and the divine. The relationship was not abstract, it was structural. The Maya conceived of the universe as having three vertical layers: the heavens above, the mortal earth in the middle, and the below, the underworld, which they called Xibalba. The word Xibalba in Quiche Maya translates roughly as place of fear. It was not a metaphor, it was a real destination. Every human being who died was understood to make the journey downward into Xibalba, where they would face a series of trials administered by the lords of death. Only those who passed through the trials would be permitted to continue toward resurrection and the heavens. The lords of Xibalba were not vague forces of evil. They were specific, named beings with specific domains of suffering. One lord presided over illness, another caused people to waste away, others brought poverty, pain, and sudden death. Together they governed a realm that was beyond lethal, a place built to break the human spirit and consume the human body. And that is where Camazotz lived. Before we get into the story itself, we must understand why exactly the bat was chosen. Bats were not marginal creatures in the Mesoamerican thought. They were central to it, precisely because they occupied the boundary between worlds. They emerged at dusk when day became night. They navigated in complete darkness. They roosted in caves, which the Maya understood as literal openings in the surface of the earth, thresholds leading downward into the underworld. The cave was sacred and terrifying in equal measure. It was a place of offering, oracle, death, and transformation. The Quiche Maya word for bat is sots. The Tzotzil Maya people of the Chiapas, who still exist today in the highland community around San Cristobal de las Casas, take their very name from the bat. The sots was not merely an animal to be observed, it was a symbol encoded into identity and cosmology. And the bat, the ancient Maya would have been most familiar with in the lowland regions of Mesoamerica, was not just any bat. The Vampirum spectrum, the spectral bat, also called the false vampire bat, is the largest bat in the Western Hemisphere with a wingspan of up to a meter. It is native to the tropical forests of Central America. It is a carnivore. It hunts birds and small mammals at night, using a single killing bite. It does not echolocate like smaller bats. It hunts by sound and sight alone, in near total darkness. To encounter one in a cave at night would be a genuinely terrifying experience. Camazotz is almost certainly this creature, magnified, deified, given purpose. His name in Quiche Maya combines Kame, death, Risotz, bat. He is literally the death bat. And in the cosmology of the ancient Maya, he was not the spirit of evil for its own sake. He was a specific agent of Xibalba assigned a specific function to kill in the darkness without warning this sudden and absolute finality. Almost everything we know about Camazotz comes from a single document, the Propovu. The Popol Vuh is the Quiche Maya creation narrative, a text that covers the origins of the world, the creation of human beings, the adventures of the divine hero twins, and the founding of the Quiche people. It draws on oral traditions that are centuries, possibly millennia older than its written form. The version we have today was set down in the Quiche language using the Latin alphabet sometime around 1550 to 1518 CE after the Spanish conquest by Quiche scribes who understood that without a written record, the knowledge would be lost. Their instinct was correct. The Spanish colonial project in Mesoamerica was, among other things, a systematic campaign against indigenous knowledge. In 1562, Franciscan Bishop Diego de Landa ordered the burning of Maya books in the Yucatan. An unknown number of screenfold codices, hand painted dark paper books encoding centuries of Maya history, medicine, astronomy, and religion were destroyed in a single afternoon. Of all the Maya books that once existed, only four survive today: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. Everything else is gone. The Popol Vuh survived because it had already been transcribed into Latin script, hidden in plain sight within the new colonial language. A Dominican friar named Francisco Jimenez discovered the Quiche manuscript in the early 18th century in the town of Santo Tomas Chichicastenango, Guatemala, translated into Spanish and copied both texts. Without that sequence of decisions, the story of Camazotz, along with the entire cosmological system that produced him, would have been lost forever. What Jimenez preserved is one of the great texts of world literature, and at its center is a story about descent, sacrifice, and survival. The hero twins are named Hunapu and Shibalanke. They are the sons of a father who was self-killed by the lords of Xibalba in an earlier generation. They are young, clever, and extraordinary masters of the ball game, skilled hunters, and crucially, not fully mortal. Their story is built around the journey into Xibalba to avenge their father and to outwit the lords of death on their own territory. The underworld is designed as a gauntlet. The lords of Xibalba send the twins through a series of houses, each one a different form of suffering. There is the dark house with no light, the rattling house which never stops shaking with cold, the jaguar house, the fire house, the razor house. Each house is built to exhaust or destroy a human being. The twins survive, each one through cleverness, patience, and cooperations. Then they reach the House of Bats. The Popol Vuh describes this place as the home of Camazotz. Zotzilaha Chimalkan, the cave of bats. Inside, the death bat circles constantly in the darkness, wings beating, ready. The twins cannot fight him. They cannot reason with him. The only strategy available is to hide and wait. Hunapu climbs inside his blowgun and stays there throughout the night, motionless, breathing shallowly, while Camazotz sweeps overhead in the darkness. The night passes, neither twin sleeps. Then, as the darkness begins to lift, Hunapu makes a single mistake. He peers out of the blowgun to check whether dawn has arrived. It has not. Camazotz takes his head with one strike. What follows is one of the most striking passages in the Popol Vuh. The lords of Xibalba immediately take Hunapu's severed head and hang it above the ball court as a trophy, a desecration and a taunt. Xabalanque, alone now and faced with the impossible, responds with extraordinary composure. He fashions a replacement head for his twin brother from a squash gourd, sculpting it into the shape of Hunapu's face, and props his brother's body upright. Then, in the ballgame that follows, the lords of Xibalba using Hunapu's real head as the ball, Xabalanque calls on a rabbit. During play, the rabbit runs, the lords chase it, their attention breaks, and in that moment Xabalanque retrieves his brother's real head and replaces the gourd. Hunapu is restored, the trick has worked. The twins go on to defeat the lords of Xibalba, not by brute force but by strategy, sacrifice, and a willingness to die and come back. They are eventually sacrificed by the lords themselves, ground to dust and thrown into the river, and on the fifth day they rise again, first as catfish, wandering performers, and then finally their true selves. They reveal themselves to the lords, demonstrate their power over death, and the lords beg to be killed and revives. The twins kill them, but they do not revive them. Hunapu and Xabalanque ascend. They become the sun and the moon, or in other interpretations, the sun and Venus. The cycle of the cosmos begins. Camazotz does not receive a defeat. He is not tricked, punished, or transformed by the end of the Popol Vuh. He simply recedes back into the darkness of Xibalba once the hero twins leave. He was not the final villain. He was simply a test, the most brutal one, because unlike fire or cold or blades, he cannot be outsmarted in the moment. The only response to Camazotz is stillness and patience, and even that is not enough if your attention slips for a single heartbeat. This is not a narrative accident. The Maya conception of death was not linear. Death was not an ending to be defeated once and for all. It was a force that had to be navigated, endured, and outwitted again and again across a cyclical cosmos. The sun itself descended into Xibalba each night and had to pass through the underworld before it could rise again in the morning. Everything that lived was engaged in this constant negotiation with the dark. Camazotz, in this framework, represents the specific terror of sudden arbitrary death, the kind that comes without warning in the dark, when you're doing everything right and just make one tiny error. He is not a punishment for sin or arrogance. He is the danger that exists for its own reasons, that does not care about virtue or courage, that waits for you simply because waiting is what the dark actually does. That is a more honest but more terrifying conception of mortality than most traditions allow. The Spanish colonization of Mesoamerica did not erase Camazotz from the cultural memory of the Maya people. It buried him. The Quiche and Tzotzil communities of highland Guatemala and Chiapas maintain oral traditions, weaving practices and ritual calendars that encoded pre-Columbian cosmology in forms that colonial authorities did not fully recognize or suppress. The bat remained a significant figure in community symbolism. The underworld, renamed in the language of Catholicism but structured accordingly to older logic, continued to operate in the moral imagination of communities who had learned to survive by translation rather than abandonment. Today, the Popol Vuh is recognized as a UNESCO level cultural heritage document, and is widely taught across Guatemala, Mexico, and internationally. Camazotz has entered popular culture, appearing in modern fantasy literature, video games, and graphic novels, often stripped of his original contexts and reimagined simply as a monster. But in the highlands of Guatemala and Chiapas, among communities who have maintained an unbroken relationship with Quiche and Tzotzil traditions across 5 centuries of displacement and erasure, the bat is not a monster. It is a messenger, a threshold guardian, a reminder that the underworld is real, that death comes without announcement, and that the only thing standing between you and Camazotz is the discipline to stay inside the blowgun, keep still, and wait for true dawn. Hunapu looked out too early. Do not make the same mistake.